Are Pokemon Scarlet and Violet worth it? This isn't going to be a super comprehensive look through at Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, but just a bunch of bullet points that I wanted to bring up, because I'm not talking about every single new Pokemon, not talking about every single track. I'm just talking about the general things this game has to offer, and what's new, what's different, what's better, what's worse, if the game runs better than VDSP. And we're going to start by just talking about the gyms. The gym challenge, Victory Road as it's called, because that is the part that is normal. Gym balancing sucks. For example, and I'm going to be judging the gym order based on their level. The second to last gym exclusively uses double battles and gives you a stat boost every turn. Which, to me, implies Game Freak has no confidence people know how to use double battles. Aside from that, the gyms are fine. My big issue with them is they don't scale for levels in an open world game, which we'll get to that later, but level scaling is something this game desperately needs, and I really wish it had at launch. And hopefully it will get in a patch. It probably won't, but hopefully the next games do, I guess. But gyms? Generally solid. The gyms that are tough, like the ice gym, is really fun. I really enjoyed that gym. I was very much equal level with it, and it put up a fight. I was literally down to my last Pokemon. Obviously, I don't use items in battle, just because I personally don't like it, but I do enjoy when Pokemon give us a challenge. And the gym challenge sometimes does that. Again, with its big issue being the lack of scaling, and general issues that just come from the gym challenge and Victory Road is very much formatted like a traditional Pokemon game, despite this game being open world now instead of linear. Essentially, the same issues that you hear repeated regarding Gen 6's latter half of gyms, where their level curves are weird, things are just unbalanced weirdly, because the game opened up. And it's the same case here, where since they're treating this as a traditional Pokemon game, where Gym 1 needs to be stronger than Gym 2, and Gym 2 needs to be stronger than Gym 3, it makes the game pacing feel a bit awkward when you can do Gym 8 immediately. So, basically, gym pacing is a bit weird. Path of Legends, or as I like to call it, this is where all the HMs are. You should do this one, like, pronto. And I quite like it. It's fun, they're fun boss battles. It essentially brings back the totem Pokemon mechanic from Sun and Moon, which I think is a really cool way to add a second campaign, by essentially taking a mechanic that was part of the major story in a prior Pokemon game and putting it back in. Because I know the trials weren't that well received because people want a gym, but I did like them. And I do think as a supplementary thing to the gym challenge, it is a really good idea. And I do enjoy all of these fights. Some are actually really tough. Like, I'm trying to be as quick as I can here, because some of them are ridiculously hard, in my opinion. Or more accurately, since I was trying to do them, like, as some of my first priorities, I think I was really underleveled. I couldn't tell you, because I don't know these Pokemon's levels, because they aren't shown in game. But they are some really fun challenges. They are some really fun fights, and I really enjoyed doing them. The hard thing is I don't want to spoil a lot of what these have in store, because there are some really cool ones. Aside from, like, the two that Pokemon revealed beforehand. There's one a friend literally described as Mario 64 to get to it. So, I really do enjoy Path of Legends. So, let's talk about the final story before we get into what makes this game different. Starfall Street. Auto battling in this game is really boring. I don't like it. Story-wise, it's somewhat interesting, but honestly, I don't have much to say. But albeit, some of the boss battles are somewhat challenging, and I do enjoy them, and I find it hilarious that out of the things you can do from the very start of the game without participating in any major battles, out of the 18, you can literally immediately fight the final Team Star guy, I'm pretty sure, who is level nearly 60. The final gym is 46. the final team star, like, admin is literally, I think, 56. That's a 10 level difference between the 8th gym and the 5th star. But my problem lies with basically, I do not care for auto battling. It's boring. I was worried about it when they revealed it. I just don't care. I'll be entirely blunt. They were what I think everyone's put off till last. I can say I put them off till last. I know, like, a friend has put them off till last. Like, generally, they are boring and they suck. And are being procrastinated. So, yeah. That's basically all I have to say on Starfall Street. But it's more, I really wish they weren't taking 8 years to start. And auto-battling ruins what fun there would be with the somewhat difficult battles. Like, I'll be entirely honest. Remove the auto-battling. Add, like, a mini-boss, prior to the actual leader. And I think they'd be really fun. But auto-battling ruins it for me. I'll be entirely honest. I have ignored it my whole playthrough outside of this. Lastly, but certainly not least for major sections, the open world. And then after this, performance. But we'll get to that in a minute. The open world is actually really fun to travel along. It's decently large, albeit I wish it was a bit bigger. Catching Pokemon is fun, and I really get the collection aspect of Pokemon in this game, which is something that only Legends Arceus and this have been able to capture for me. Which sucks that it's something that's rare, because it is the thing for Pokemon. And I'll be entirely honest, exploring's fun. Just catching Pokemon is fun. I really like the direction this is going. The cities are eh. But I really do genuinely love how much fun it is to explore. To find new areas. To find new Pokemon. And here's the thing. This is partially because it's my first playthrough. Because games like Breath of the Wild also don't really hold up as well on second playthrough compared to a first. Breath of the Wild is still fantastic on subsequent playthroughs. But the fun, like, the best part for me is that initial exploration. But here's the thing. It still kinda will be, because it'll be like, because if I play the other version, it's like, oh wait, that Pokemon's here now? Cool! I don't know. It's really fun. Exploring's fun. The map sucks unless you press R3. Point being, the map is really weird. It's this whole thing. I don't know how to explain it, but it's awful. I'm fairly certain the mini-map just doesn't work. But if you can ignore that and just go in a direction, explore, turn at whatever catches your eye, climb the mountains that look cool, the game is phenomenal. There have been so many moments where I'm like, I feel like I've already been there, and I'm like, well, I still need to go through there to get to the next major thing. Wait, that's here? I have not seen that before. I'm like, oh, time for a detour. This game is surprisingly good at that. It's amazing because you're just doing something and then you get sidetracked. And you don't mind getting sidetracked because it's really fun. The open world exploration is fun. Like, this is something that loves open world to begin with. But I do really love exploring this world. Like, literally the only thing I wish this game had that it doesn't, aside from quality of life stuff, which I'll go into in a minute here, is the capture system from Legends Arceus. Now anyway, the quality of life stuff. Things need to scale. They don't. Everything's a static level. Everything's static. Which isn't a big deal in a traditional Pokemon game, but when you can do the gyms in reverse order, and that is something you can pretty well do without badges, or without glitches, it's a pretty big issue. Essentially, the lack of scaling is the one thing that kills the open world for me. which sucks, because everything aside from that is fantastic. And the worst part is, Sword and Shield had level scaling, sort of. If you recall, the wild area Pokemon levels actually increased depending on your badge level. It wasn't amazing, but I'll be entirely honest, if Scarlet and Violet had something like that, where even if the gym trainer, like gym leaders and Titans, their levels just increased to correspond to your badges and stuff, that'd be cool. That'd be fine. If their Pokemon hits an evolution level, evolve it. You don't need to change their movesets or their teams, preferably give them more Pokemon if they do, but essentially, level scaling genuinely could have been the thing to save the open world for me. Because it's fantastic and I love it, but that is what's holding it back. And I really wish I didn't have to say that. Because exploring is fun, I love it. But that part specifically basically makes you either do and have fun with like 3-4 gyms and then the rest are cakewalks, or have to ignore the open world aspect and play the game linearly. I thankfully didn't. I just conveniently ended up at the gyms that were close enough to my level. But that is a massive issue, because I really do want both a challenge and an open world, and it's kind of hard to have a challenge when the game immediately pushes you towards the second gym. You will, like, the game basically goes, okay, go to the second Team Star base, the second Titan, and the second gym. What about the first? Oh yeah, those are on the other side, but you probably won't visit till like 2 gyms from now. It'll be fine. Point being, the lack of scaling just is a big issue. Oh, now time for the elephant in the room. The stability. Well, considering the game can go from anywhere between half a frame to 30 frames a second, yeah, it's not very stable. The game has lower quality models for Pokemon that are further away, which I really appreciate. The only problem is I see them when I'm in a fight with that Pokemon. Almost constantly. Especially if the Pokemon is Torkoal, specifically for some reason. Which, I appreciate the lower quality models. It helps with things like this. Genuinely, it does. And I'm glad they did it. But here's another issue. Memory leak. Memory leak, for those who don't know, is essentially the game's RAM just stops working at a point. Like, it's starting to lose bits and loads slower, and it gets worse. And I think a part of that is the game apparently doesn't unload the towns. Like, if you visit one of the towns or the cities, it just doesn't unload until you close the game. So what it essentially means is, I've been playing for 2 hours, my game is starting to consistently go at 2 frames a second, time to save and shut down the game to immediately continue playing it. The memory leak is an issue Xenoblade 2 had, albeit a lot less severe. And that is really annoying. Because I'm someone who doesn't want to have to literally close out of the game in the middle of playing it just so I can continue playing the game. To me, that takes me out of the game in the immersion. Again, the frame rate consistency is awful. It's even worse in the cities that they seemingly refuse to unload, apparently. I've seen Pokeball throwing animations so framey that I can literally count them. Like, this may sound negative, but I do love this game, but its performance is awful. Now, the elephant in the room is the Nintendo Switch holding it back. Or is it Game Freak? And I think it's actually Game Freak. Now, the Nintendo Switch is definitely part of the problem because it is ridiculously underpowered. But, here's the thing. I don't think, like, yes, I'd understand if it would only run 30 frames a second. I could understand if it had some issues. But the amount it has tells me it's Game Freak. Because things like Xenoblade 3, which are easily as large as this game, if not larger, run pretty much perfectly. Albeit it has issues, and I'm willing to admit, the Switch is holding that game back. But I don't think it's so glaring where you definitely can't argue the Switch is in holding it back. Compared to this, where it's like, oh yeah, this is Game Freak's fault. Like, the game should not be running at 3 frames a second. And I don't think it'd be running that much better if it were put on something like a PS5. Because the game isn't optimized. Which is something I'm noticing a lot more recently, where it feels like games aren't optimized. But that's what's the point. The game apparently is buggy, but honestly, I haven't encountered any glitches, aside from the minimap not working. So, the performance, bugs, and stuff are really just that. To answer the question immediately, is the game, like, more stable and less buggy than BDSP? Sort of. BDSP could run a consistent frame rate, but was extremely buggy. Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, while having bugs, aren't as glaring or as noticeable, but it can't even hold a solid 15 frames a second. So, it's a case of pick your poison. But BDSP, I think, deserved more flack, because also, it's a remake of a game from 2006. Which means, it's never going to have been designed to be intensive or complicated, because it's a DS game from 16 years ago. But either way, let's talk about the finale. Next up, the verdict. I'll be entirely honest, some of the new Pokemon designs are great. The game's really fun, but unstable. And frankly, I'm enjoying it. I'm going to play them well into post-game, and frankly, if you already like Pokemon, it's great. If you're on the fence about Pokemon, go ahead. If you didn't like Pokemon back in Gen 7 or 6, and especially 8, then it's not for you. The games are fun, but you pretty well get exactly what is shown to you. And for a full-price AAA game, they don't run very well, but honestly, for a full-price game, you get a really fun experience that you can play with friends. And at that, playing with friends is extra fun. Especially, but I will say this much, apparently local play keeps kicking someone at 4 people, but works well on 3. I do not know. I have not played this game with local play, but according to people I know who have played local play, the game was fine with 3 people, but could not handle a 4th on local. But when one of them decided to use the free trial for NSO, it ran perfectly fine. Either way, I really enjoyed the game, so make sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.